Hello ladies and gentlemen and non-binary pals, I know it's been a while, but I'm back with a new video. I've decided to make another one of my Jojo teams, but this time with the protagonist of the series. I'm only going to be covering part 1 through part 6, so sorry for those who were hoping for Johnny or Gabby. The rules for the last Jojo Pokemon team also apply to this one as well. Since it's been a while, I remind you of the rules. Rule 1, they all get a full team of 6. Rule 2, 1 legendary, even if it's an ultra beast or a mythical. Rule 3 is that they're not all based on appearances. With that, we'll begin the video. We'll start our list with the very first Jojo, Joestar. Nah, I'm just kidding. We're starting with Jonathan Joestar, the very face of nobility and very gentlemanlike in stature. So, we're going to start with his first Pokemon, Sirfetch'd. I merely chose Sirfetch'd due to the fact that in part 1, Jonathan is given the sword from Bruford called Pluck and Pluck. To be completely honest, my thought process was really just me looking at Sirfetch'd and saying, hey, Luck and Duck. But in all seriousness, Sirfetch'd is a good Pokemon to start off Jonathan's team. His Sirfetch'd probably has the Scrappy ability to help hit those zombies and chimeras. Next on our list is his trusty Arcanine. I would imagine young Jonathan having this Pokemon as a Growlithe, but ending up training it and using a Firestone later in the stages of life. Arcanine being a loyal dog Pokemon works well with Jonathan, who would pay great homage to Danny, his Great Dane companion. Also, Arcanine's hidden ability Justify will work against certain enemies. The fire type on his team is Cinderace. Why Cinderace? Well, Jonathan played rugby in his college years. Or would it be Academy? I was never sure. Anyway, Cinderace is believed to have great fighting spirit, just like Jonathan, though it is only mentioned in its Gigantamax sword decks. Infused with Cinderace's fighting spirit, the gigantic Pyroball never misses its target and completely roasts the opponent. I bet if he set up with a Libero Cinderace, he would have a really good team ahead of him. Thinking about his fighting spirit, we move on to Hitmonchan. The reason why I've chosen Hitmonchan is due to Jonathan's skill as a boxer. He would probably put the elemental punches and a stab move on his Hitmonchan, and I wouldn't put it past him to have an Iron Fist Hitmonchan. This Pokemon is also the most surprising. His next Pokemon is Appleton. I've chosen Appleton for his team due to its Pokedex. Jonathan, believe it or not, has an incredible sweet tooth. His favorite treat is technically chocolate, but having an Appleton nearby as a child, he would have snacked on it. The Pokedex entry for its shield reads as such. Its body is covered in a sweet nectar, and the skin on its back is especially yummy. Children used to have it as a snack. Appleton is such a good dragon type to have on his team since it helps with the water coverage for his fire types, and with its high health, and if you get its hidden ability Thick Fat, it'll be pretty bulky, and it nails down the ice weakness down from 4 times to 2 times, which is, if you ask me, is better than nothing at all. His legendary, I have chosen Solgaleo. This one is really simple. Being the face of the sun Pokemon game and being known as the emissary of the sun, it would make sense for Jonathan to hold this Pokemon. Hamon, or the Ripple, not only uses breathing techniques, but also requires energy from the sun. And what better Pokemon to have your side than Solgaleo for your Hamon? Lions are also known to be noble animals, and being noble by birth, Jonathan would relate to this Pokemon just a little bit. That's all for Jonathan's team. Next on to Joestar. Joestar, a grandchild of Irina and Jonathan Joestar, the son of Lisa and George Joestar II. his first Pokemon, Whimsicott. Believe it or not, Whimsicott is a prankster. According to its Pokedex, this Pokemon will leave its cotton all over the place as a prank. Plus, having the ability prankster kinda helps solidify this as well. Joseph is a prankster through and through, no matter how old he is. He used this Pokemon not only in battles, but for his pranks. I kinda feel bad for Speedwagon and Caesar. Especially Caesar. Poor thing probably has to wake up with cotton everywhere. Next Pokemon is Xatu. We are very familiar with Xatu's various Pokedex entries stating that it has the ability to see the future. Joseph has this funny little quirk where he can determine your next line. Xatu would be the best suited for Joseph if only it could have foretold him losing his hand. Anywho, next Pokemon. The next Pokemon is Lopunny. Why Lopunny for Joseph? Simple. Lopunny is a very cautious Pokemon. I know refer to the Pokedex often in this video, but it fits the characters' personalities. Lopunny, according to the Pokedex, will quickly bound off when it senses danger. Granted, Joseph doesn't really run from most danger, but he will run in any signs that he might be in over his head. His next Pokemon also represents the secret Joestar technique, Golisopod, a very strong bug type, and it would be useful in most battles for Joseph. But once its health is in the yellow, its ability emergency exit will make it retreat and will have to rely on its other Pokemon. Hopefully he gave his Golisopod some really good moves. May I suggest Leech Life or First Impression for a stab bug move. Our next Pokemon is a starter Pokemon, Infernape. Joseph would have this Pokemon on his team for the mere fact that it's fast and hits hard, especially with its hidden ability. Infernape also reminds me of the Monkey King from the Journey of the West, which was also known to be a trickster, so I thought it'd be a nice addition to his team. For his legendary, I went with Tapu Lele. Unfortunately, the only reason I went with Tapu Lele was because of its hidden ability Telepathy, which anticipates moves and dodges them, which is back to his next line quirk, though Tapu Lele is a good Pokemon to have at his side. With a good amount of special attack, special defense, and speed, he can hit hard and be fast enough to pull it off as long as he avoids hard-hitting dark sweepers. Now we move on from Joseph to his grandson, Jotaro Kujo. Jotaro was a little hard to come up with, but after some research, I was able to get his team together. First, we start with Pangoro. When looking at Pangoro, it was better suited to be Jotaro's Pokemon than I ever thought. Also learned a new word that describes it. It's a cantankerous Pokemon, but has a strong heart, and doesn't forgive those who pick on the weak. Cantankerous apparently means ill-tempered and quarrelsome and disagreeable. Its second definition is the one I'm looking at for Jotaro personally, which is difficult to handle. Jotaro himself has stated that he has beaten the crap out of students who try to bully him. He also beats up teachers who try to make an example out of him. And for some odd reason, he doesn't pay for food if he doesn't think it's good. By no means does he consider himself evil. What better Pokemon to represent this than Pangoro? Our next Pokemon is Golurk. When we first meet Jotaro, he is believed to be possessed by an evil spirit. We now know that spirit to be Star Platinum, and he was far from an evil spirit. But I couldn't help but think at that moment while picking out a Pokemon for his team, Golurk is a perfect Pokemon for him to remind us of that moment. Plus, with its Iron Fist ability, it would be a strong physical attacker, if only if it had a little bit better defense and special defense to help it out a little more. His next Pokemon represents his later career in a later part, and it's none other than Starmie. In Part 4, Jotaro is not only trying to catch stand users, but also trying to get his doctorate so he could be a marine biologist. His assignment for this was to do research on the starfish. Fun fact, starfish aren't actually fish, which is why most marine biologists call them sea stars instead. Anyway, this Pokemon would most likely have been caught during his time in Morio, and he would use it to the best of his ability. Seeing how he's a mostly physical fighter type guy, this would probably be something new for him. Something to definitely learn from. It's always nice to get out of your comfort zone just a little bit, to try something new. Another water type on his team is Clawitzer, another special attacker on his team. Clawitzer is a Pokemon based on the pistol shrimp, which I would like to point out that I've seen a video of a guy who picked up one and it punched him through his boot to the point he was bleeding. Surely you wouldn't want to accidentally fish up one of these thinking it would be nice on a dinner plate. Back to Clawitzer. Its Pokédex states that it compresses water that sucks it up and has enough power to punch a hole right through a thick sheet of iron. This isn't anything new, of course. There are some companies and places where they use water to cut through thick pieces of metal. This Pokemon would be a powerhouse on Jotaro's team, granted if he uses it correctly. It's powerful, but slow. We have yet another water type on his team, but this one has a bit of a punch to it. I introduced Poliwrath to his team. This Pokemon is apparently very athletic. Jotaro was part of a track and field team when he was younger. I'm not sure if he was still in track during the time of Stardust Crusaders, but that's getting a little off track. Thank you, I'm here all night. I'm not saying Poliwrath is running any marathons, especially with that 70 base speed, but apparently it can outswim any human swimmer. This is backed up with its hidden ability, Swift Swim 2. Looks to me that Jotaro might try and go for a rain team. Maybe. His last Pokemon and his legendary is Lugia. Lugia is known as the guardian of the seas, and when it flaps its wings it can cause a 70-day storm. Lugia by Jotaro's side is definitely a powerhouse to be sure, though Lugia itself is more defensive than offensive. Though if he has a multi-scale Lugia, we all better watch out. Now we leave to our next Jojo, who is from a crazy, noisy, bizarre town. Our next Jojo is someone I'd like to call the Prince of Morio, Josuke Higashikata. Josuke's team is unique to say the least, and I personally like his team. His first Pokemon is Audino. We all know Audino. This Pokemon is known for its kind heart, and by touching with its feelers, Audino can gauge others' feelings and physical conditions, which makes it perfect for doctors and nurses. Josuke, having a healing stand, could use Audino to help identify anything he needs to heal that he can't detect. The next Pokemon on his team is his starter, Swampert. Swampert is most likely the powerhouse of his team, seeing how in the Dex entries stating that a Swampert can swim towing a large ship, I wouldn't be too surprised to see it on his team. It's also stated in its Dex to be able to predict storms, and having a Swampert in Morio, which is a small coastal town, would help in a lot of cases where storms could hit the coast of Morio. Our next water type is Lantern. I know Lantern is an odd choice, but I would like to believe that he just caught this Pokemon to help him against his fight against Akira. Since Lantern is known to have the ability Volt Absorb, but he just ended up keeping it on his team as another bulky water type. It's also able to light its antenna, which you can see from a depth of 3 miles, which gives it the name Deep Sea Star. predicting its way into Josuke's team is Espeon. Espeon is an extremely loyal Pokemon to its trainer, just like Josuke is to his friends. This Pokemon is said to develop its precognitive powers to protect its trainer from harm. Josuke is the same way with his town, protecting all those who live there from those who wish to bring harm to Morio. Unfortunately, Espeon isn't good at battling at night according to its Ultra Moon Dex entry. Not like Josuke will be running around at night anyway. The next Pokemon on our list is Drampa. Despite looking like a delinquent, Josuke has a really kind heart and is caring to those around him, and Drampa is a good Pokemon to represent that. Another reason why I picked Drampa is because of its Shield Pokedex. Drampa is a kind and friendly Pokemon, up until it's angered. When that happens, it stirs up a gale, flattens everything around. This represents Josuke's feelings towards his hair. Anyone who makes fun of his hair must meet with his wrath. There are those who got away with it with just minor injuries, but the one person who didn't get away with it with minor injuries was Rohan. The legendary that I have chosen for Josuke is Meloetta. I know that Meloetta is an odd choice, but I have a good explanation and it's really simple. Josuke loves music, especially Prince. I mean, who couldn't groove to a good Prince song? When it sings, it can control how others are feeling, as long as they could hear it, of course. It's time to say goodbye to Morio and say ciao to the streets of Rome, where we'll meet our next Jojo. Our next Jojo is a little bit of a special case, but welcome in Giorno Giovanna. Despite being Dio's child, he still got them Joestar genes. So let's start with his first Pokemon. The first Pokemon on his team is Politoed. Politoed is a reference to his encounter with Leaky Eye Luca. Politoed is also the leader of all Poliwags and Poliworlds. It's unfortunately the only reason why I picked Politoed, but that doesn't make it a bad choice. Meganium is the next Pokemon on his team. Meganium is more of a support Pokemon more than it is a special attacker, but this doesn't stop Giorno from using it to its full potential. Meganium's Pokedex entries also state that its breath has the ability to revive dead grass and plants to make them healthy again. It also calms and soothes emotions. Meganium is a great companion Pokemon for Giorno as well. Another grass starter I put on his team is Torterra. Torterra is a powerhouse grass and ground type for Giorno's team. We all know Torterra as the continent Pokemon. Pokédex even says that Pokemon build their nest on their backs, and even some Pokemon live on its back and spend their entire lives on it. I just thought this Pokemon was a neat little addition to Giorno's team. Our first shiny Pokemon of this video is Orbeetle. I chose Orbeetle because it reminds me of his ladybug emblems on his suit. I do believe Orbeetle is a good Pokemon on his team because of its crazy defense stats and speed. Despite the weaknesses this Pokemon has, I do believe it's a great Pokemon for his team. This Elder Tree Pokemon is spooking its way up in Giorno's team. Trevenant is another grass type I have added to Giorno's team. This Pokemon would protect trees in the forest it dwells in. That would actually be very useful for Giorno if he uses his stand to make trees around his enemies. Wouldn't it be a great idea if he had his Trevenant curse his enemies by touching or hurting the trees? I thought it was a good idea, though a fire type could easily remedy that. Another guardian deity shows up on this team as Tapu Bulu is Giorno's legendary. Tapu Bulu is a great fairy type to have on Giorno's team. Physical and defensive, I think he'd benefit from this Pokemon a lot, both as a battling Pokemon and as a companion. Tapu Bulu causes vegetation to grow, but it's known to be lazy. Imagine chilling with a Tapu Bulu on your side. time for us to leave Rome and find our way in the Everglades in Florida. Our final JoJo is a recent entry, Kujo Jotaro's daughter, Jolyne. Her first Pokemon comes to no surprise as it's a Butterfree. Jolyne is known to have a butterfly tattoo, which is based on the person who wrote the song Jolyne, Miss Dolly Parton. Butterfree is a good start to her team if you ask me, plus with its G-Max form, she can really send some of her enemies packing. Another bug type on her team is a Leavanny. Leavanny makes a silk-like string it uses to make clothing for smaller Pokemon. Jolyne also uses the strings from Stone Free to help her against her enemies, and that is what inspired me to add Leavanny to her team. She could also use Leavanny with Weather Report, since hers would definitely have its hidden ability Overcoat. Flying High and Proud is Braviary. I didn't just add this Pokemon to her team due to her living in Florida, but actually because of its Pokedex entries. This Pokemon fights for their friends without any thought about danger to themselves. It won't stop fighting even when injured. This Pokemon represents Jolyne's fighting spirit, and with the ability to fight, they work together to be free. The sweetest Pokemon on her team is a shiny Slurpuff. I know that Slurpuff is a strange choice, but it's not so far-fetched. The shiny form of Slurpuff makes it look like a chocolate sundae. The one thing Jolyne misses in prison is chocolate, so I thought I would connect the dots on that one. Its Shield Dex entry says that it's first full of air. A lot of air. So it's soft to the touch and lighter than it looks. I thought that was a nice little bit of information. Her next Pokemon is a personal favorite of mine and the final evolution to my mascot, Haxorus. I have a really good reason why she has this Pokemon, and it's not because of bias. Shield Dex entry states, while usually kind-hearted, it can be terrifying if angered. I believe this is pretty much the mature Jolyne. She is kind-hearted because she is a terrifying adversary to those who are against her. Haxorus is powerful and can be used in many ways. With its speed and power, it can handle a lot of Pokemon as long as you're careful with its defense. Her legendary is another guardian deity, Tapu Fini. The reason why I chose this one is due to the name of the part, Stone Ocean. This Pokemon is able to control water, and that ocean currents are the source of its energy. This Pokemon is also feared and revered due to it living within a thick fog. Jolyne may have this Pokemon, but does she truly control it? Maybe. We'll have to see. What did you think about the video? Leave a comment down below. And I hope you enjoyed this video.